If I could have some quiet, please, in the public gallery. And if councillors could please take a seat, and staff, thank you. So we're moving on to 10.2, adoption of Class 4 gambling and TAB venue gambling policy 2023. I'll pass over to staff. Thank you.
Kia ora koutou. Yeah, as noted, we are doing looking at the Class 4 gambling and TAB venue gambling policy 2023. This is the sort of final step in the process for this paper today. So we have recently been through a public consultation process on our draft policy, and then we've also had a briefing with elected members about the findings of that consultation. And so what we're presenting to you today is a revised draft policy based on those conversations and that consultation process. I'll take the paper as read, but just draw your attention to the two changes that we're proposing to the draft policy today. The first one is that we are proposing to amend the wording to not consent any venue mergers. We did have some debate about this in the briefing, but broadly speaking, this only applies to club corporate societies. And we consider that this is that not allowing any venue mergers is most in line with the broader policy that we're taking around gambling. There is also a minor change that we're proposing, which is at paragraph 18 of the paper, which talks about the ability to relocate gambling facilities nearby. This is actually a DIA decision for them to make rather than one for council. So we've removed the proposed draft clause and have instead just added a footnote that explains that that is the decision of DIA. So those are the only two changes that we're proposing to the policy that went out for consultation. So with that, I will hand it over for questions.
Any questions? Councillor Kirby.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a quick question. You mentioned not allowing venue mergers. Recommendation D specifies not allowing club mergers. Can I just have some clarity around the wording there? Is that the appropriate wording when you've referenced venue mergers, and the rest of the way down it tends to refer to, including our consultation, referring to venues, not clubs?
It does only apply to club corporate societies under the Gambling Act, so the club wording in the recommendation is correct, and we can double check to make sure there's clarity in the policy document around that as well, but that would be we can just do that offline.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Spires.
Thank you. Just for clarification, is there a sinking lid policy on the TABs, or is that just for gambling?
It is also a sinking lid for TAB venues. However, we currently have no TAB standalone venues, which is all that this applies to. So it doesn't apply to TAB venues that are inside other facilities. It's only to standalone venues, and we currently don't have any in Kapiti. So the sinking lid basically prevents any from setting up. The TAB's advised that they had no intention of bringing a standalone venue to Kapiti.
Okay. So it won't affect the one?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, Kathy will still be able to have $1 each way on buy bill on the 7th at Trentham. So yeah, as far as the TABs are concerned, my understanding is that a now majority is online with the TAB anyway. A majority of the spend is online. I had written down the same thing as Lawrence, but just to make it clear around the wording here that we're talking about machines, so we are not allowing venue mergers, because there will be a number of those going on in Kapiti, clubs in particular, where club memberships in one club is falling, but they've got a great venue, and the other clubs has got plenty of members, but their venue is falling to pieces. So very often they merge. Now, we have had historically mergers pretty much for the sake of poker machines. Club Vista and the RSA is probably a good example of that. but there are just genuine reasons why clubs want a merger. So we're not suggesting no. So as long as
No.
that's clear to people.
Yes, so this policy only relates to gaming and the electronic gaming machines. So the only impact this has on clubs choosing to merge for other reasons is that they wouldn't be able to, if they both had pokie machines, they wouldn't just be able to put them all together in one place. It would prevent them. It would prevent them being able to basically increase the number of gaming machines that they had in an individual venue. But you could still merge you could still choose to merge two clubs. It would just be a secondary decision about the gaming machine.
And there was one technical.
So just waiting for the microphone to come back for Councillor Wilson.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, just one technical point. So, Club A has 20 poker machines, and Club B has 2. When they merge, they can presume what they would presumably do is the club with the most machines would become the club.
Yeah, it would
so
be.
the other one would be merging with them.
It would be their choice as to which licence holder became the licence holder for the new club, and you would imagine that would be the one with the larger number of machines.
And just to clarify, let's take that same scenario. Club A has a fantastic venue but no members and 2 machines. Club B has 20 machines and 1,000 members but a crappy venue. So they're actually going to go to there. But so does that make a difference? So because they are. Yeah. So in that case, they want to bring their 20 machines to here. So does the venue itself matter, or is it about the entity? And that I couldn't find clear.
Yes, that's a really good question. It would be determined by the terms of the licence. I think we actually have Leslie, who's been looking after this policy online. Is she online? Yeah. And I'm just going to check with her to see if she has any more clarity around that particular question.
I mean, I'm happy to make the question clearer if required.
No,
Yeah, hi, sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, in the first instance, I think that's an unlikely scenario. Like basically, a club will have a minimum of 9 or 18 machines to start with. So I'm not 100% sure off the top of my head. The license belongs to the venue. So if you're talking about 20 machines wanting to move to 2-machine venue, the way I understand it would be that it would only be if they're going to give up their machines, then they would move to the other club. That's the way it would work. But the other club would have at least 9 or 18 to start with, and they're allowed a maximum of 30 combined. I don't know if that helps.
Is that you done? Yep. Councillor Coфord.
Oh, thanks, Madam Chair. When I was chair of our local food bank, we had a takeover one evening of 16 gaming machines. The company just came in and slapped stickers on the gaming machines, and the sinking lid policy was in place then. My question is this actively policed, the sinking lid policy that Kapiti Council have had for several years now? Has it got teeth?
So the sinking lid policy is new. What we've had up until this point has been a capped number of machines. So there have been caps in place that are not meant to be exceeded. But the decision to go to a sinking lid is a new policy decision for this version of the policy. That said, so council is involved in the sort of provision of consents for gaming machines, and so I guess, but we don't actively go out and police these things and go and check what people have. There is also a role for DIA in regulating gambling machines, and all gambling machines are meant to be directly basically linked into the DIA system, so they should have visibility about whether or not venues are exceeding the number of machines that they have, for example. So there are things in place, although council itself isn't actively going out and managing those.
So by sinking lid, if you stop using a gaming machine and you can't sell it on, it must close down and stop. Is that right?
As a venue or number of machines?
No, as a machine.
As a machine. So as long as the number of machines is, if you stop using machine and decommission it, I guess would be the word, then you can't get that back. I'm not sure exactly who owns, machines are generally owned by the clubs, so you're unlikely to be able to sell it on in any case.
I think the policy, this policy is focused on the operation of machines in the district. It doesn't really get into your ability to purchase or sell machines, because venues may upgrade machines from time to time, and I'd hazard a guess, if you look on Trade Me, you'll probably see them on Trade Me. But other districts have different rules, and it's likely that different districts may be allowing a range of things to happen. So we wouldn't be monitoring that, and I would hazard a guess that Internal Affairs does not monitor that either.
So we can't pick one up and put it in the garage and...
You possibly could have Trade Me. I haven't looked at it, Rob, but that might be Christmas.
No, in my experience, outside firms do operate them in the venues. Our local hotel venues are operated by outsiders, and they do tend to, change ownership. So the owner of the venue just, sits there and watches it. But it's good to hear that council has a bit more teeth nowadays and polices the sinking policy. Thank you.
Okay, I'm not seeing any more questions, so I'll ask for a mover for the recommendations A through E on page 49. Moved by Councillor Halliday, seconded by Councillor Wilson. Right of introduction.
Look, this is an ongoing policy from my perspective. We are tweaking it a bit, but generally the community is supportive, and it's a general travel of direction of travel as such. So very happy to support this. I don't have too much to add to it, to be honest. So that'll be me, but certainly we'll be endorsing the recommendations.
Any further debate? I'll put that. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? That's carried. Thank you. Thanks for the work that went into this. Fantastic. So we're moving now to adoption of smoke-free public places policy on page 71 of your agendas.
Kia ora. I would just like to make a comment as we open, and then I will hand to Angela to talk to the paper. I just want to note that during this item we will just talk to a suggestion by the Kapiti Health Advisory Group around putting a submission to the government about the smoke-free stance and policy at a general level. That sits alongside but outside the policy itself. So I just want to note that. So that will be discussed through this item, and I think that Councillor Halliday is intending to make a statement about that. And they do support this policy as it is, but it's focused at a central government level. So I'll hand over to Angela.
Thanks. Yeah, so second policy of the day, the adoption of the Smoke-Free Public Places Policy 2023. Again, this is the last step in the process. We went out for consultation on this at the same time as the gambling policy, and then we had a briefing with elected members to discuss the findings of that consultation. And so what we have here is the final version of the smoke-free policy for your agreement. We haven't proposed any changes to the policy on the basis of consultation for this policy, so it is the same policy that went out for consultation a few months ago. And so yeah, I'll take the paper as read and open it up for questions.
Any questions on this one? Councillor Wilson?
Of course, always got a question. It's a concern, so I'll frame it as a question. So one of our parks staff, for instance, sees Charlie puffing on a stogie down by the beach and says, mate, you can't do that, and now he's in trouble. That there is a concern about, with all of these things, about enforcement, and enforcement, that question has been raised. So this paper, and this was discussed through Martin's committee a number of times, but this paper seems to allow, and correct me if I'm wrong, so that's the question part of this, seems to allow for an educative approach rather than we're going to write you out a ticket kind of thing. So I'm reading that correctly, I think?
Yeah, so this policy does definitely take a focus on education rather than looking to, there are no infringements or anything like that we're going to offer. So if we have our parks person down at the beach and see someone smoking, it's more of advising them that that we have a policy that there's no smoking on the beach, but there's not going to be any kind of anything beyond that. It's really an opportunity to educate our public about it.
But what they will be able to do, and what people who like their lungs to be as pure as the driven snow, they'll be able to point to the sign.
Yeah.
Because we are going to go, we're going to go on big on signage, aren't we? Yeah.
Yeah, I think to my earlier comment about advocating to central government about a firmer stance in the space than what was previously in place, given the work that might be underway around smoke-free Aotearoa, I think that's the point, is there is no provision at this stage for us to do more than be in an education sort of zone with this health topic.
Perhaps we could send a pamphlet to Winston.
Thank you for those questions, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Halliday, do you have any questions?
Yep. Nothing too major, to be honest. Look, in the actual document itself, it talks of tamariki and rangatahi, which is absolutely fine, but I was wondering if you could just perhaps put the abbreviation in a bracket after it that it is for children and teenagers. Likewise, there's reference, and I can put the page numbers down, I'll just email them through. There's reference to young people and adults, that they can actually have the rangatahi, just so there's consistency in there, and it's just nice for people to know what that actually means there as well. I think it's just part of that education process would be quite cool. Question 2, implementation, page 79, talks to from 2025. I was just wondering why it wasn't from 2024
Yes.
as such.
Yes, so that 2025 provision is only for the outdoor dining and events that council is running. So that's really just to give us time to work with the cafes who have outdoor dining in our events staff to kind of bring that in without it being a bit of a surprise. So it just gets us a little bit of lead in time, but the rest of the stuff, because it's mostly just updating council signage and those sorts of things.
Lovely.
From the get-go.
And on number 2 on page 76, it talks to the Vaping Amendment Act 2020. I'm just curious, and it's a little bit off track here, but with that policy, does that prohibit vaping in schools? Does that actually prohibit it?
Oh, you're testing my knowledge of that. I don't believe it does prohibit vaping in schools. I mean, I'm just trying to find the reference.
I just referred to the gentleman that was in here before. Was talking about with regards to distance from schools and everything. I know schools are having a huge problem with vaping at the moment, but it was just the wording that was there sort of made it look like that vaping would be prohibited in schools.
So what they've changed in that legislation was it's a 300-metre exclusion zone around schools, and I think also marae for vaping retailers is the main change that they made through that legislation, rather than specifically prohibiting it at schools. Although I'm sure quite a lot of secondary schools will have their own rules around vaping, which will be, I'm sure, a challenge for them to.
Yeah, just look, I'll read the paragraph. The Smoke-Free Environments and Regulatory Products Vaping Amendment Act 2020 added references to vaping to the above Act. Vaping is prohibited or restricted in the locations described under the 1990 Act.
Yeah.
workplaces, education, children's centres.
And that,
I'm just wondering if that's another tool in the kit that we can use.
I guess it is. So that's the legislation that basically prohibits smoking inside, and so it's it must be including the vaping reference into that space.
Because
But I
it's a
can
public-
double check that that's
Yeah,
what that means.
if you don't mind, but we can deal with that offline. That'd be much appreciated.
Yeah.
And then, thank you very much.
I think that reference is a tool for those premises themselves to be able to.
I appreciate
activate,
that. I appreciate that.
Mr. Olsen.
Yes, thank you. Hey, one overly supportive of this. I just have one technical question on the broaden of the scope where it says that it covers train stations. Does the council have the scope to actually mandate that? Because I wasn't aware that the train stations was public land. I thought they were managed or owned by Kiwi Rail, Transdev, whoever. Yeah. So I was just really technically, I was asking about that one. Yeah.
So they are managed by, not managed by us. However, there are already policies in place by Kiwi Rail or Greater Wellington to manage smoking in those areas. So it really just, it's a bit of a catch-all policy that also allows us to do the bus stops and things alongside that in a kind of more generic way. But they are already actually, the train stations themselves, I believe, are already covered by the smoke-free
By
policies.
the ones. Yeah.
Councillor Pravanov.
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair, I am aware that through the submission process there are at least 2 submitters that they stated that they wished that this policy also included KCDC not leasing its assets to retailers selling cigarettes and vapes, as has been done in the past. And this is sort of the asset part of this is listed on page 77. So when I've raised this before in briefings, I think, well, in fact, from memory, this policy is not the place to address that, and I would be grateful to understand how this matter can be addressed, please.
So this policy isn't able to sort of get into the decisions about how council uses its property. This is an external focusing policy about where our community members can smoke. So the conversation about whether or not council should lease its properties to vaping stores or tobacco outlets is more of an internal policy around the kind of facilities management space. I'm not sure if you have anything you want to add to that, Chris, but it would be something that would be better resolved through some conversations about our property usage rather than through our smoking policy.
Yeah, one of the things that I think we have underway that we're coming back to you on next year is our property strategy, and we'll be considering more broadly our strategic approach to property in the context of the district, but also in terms of our footprint here as an organisation. It's likely that would be the time that we could look at how we are managing the property that we have, that we are leasing, and whether that's something that could be considered in terms of those internal policies.
Thank you for that, and I look forward to having that conversation and seeing how that progresses. Thank you.
Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, just follow on from what Jocelyn was saying. So the first time I was asking questions in relation to the public, this is more about commercial enforcement, so not commercial education. So, for instance, there is a vape store proposed to be open in Waikanai on the main road. It's about 50 metres down, literally 50 metres down from an existing vape store, which is inside a petrol station. It's kind of interesting. But it is certainly within 300 metres of a marae and a school. So the public are incensed about this. They go, so what are you going to do about it? And I don't think an appropriate answer is to say, well, that's a Ministry of Education thing, because we are considered the go-to people here in terms of either being able to give a response. So my question is, does this allow us, and it may be in something separate, but does this allow us to say those premises, even though they're not owned by us, cannot be used for that purpose because they are within 300 metres of a school and a marae?
So this is one of the tricky spaces that we have. So there's no consent required from council to be able to operate a vape store. So we don't have an ability to say no. I think the most appropriate way to resolve the issue of a vape store that is breaching the regulations around location would be to advise the responsible agency, which in this case would be the Ministry of Health, who administers those acts, and they would have a responsibility for managing the enforcement of those acts. So I think that would be the most appropriate way to progress that. I don't think there's anything in our space that we can do that kind of lets us scope out and say that you can't put a vape store in that kind of location.
Just to follow on from that, but as a council, rather than asking individuals to do it, but as a council, we can make a representation to the ministry and say, this is the situation, what do you advise? Because it's really, because we have the mechanisms to do that and the skills and what have you, whereas, you know, Joe and Mary Public, it just gets a bit big for them sometimes to have to go down the ministry line.
We can look at the options.
James.
Cool.
Yeah, thanks through the chair. Look, Andrew's absolutely on the money. We are not the regulating authority. The one has been set up. That's the Vaping Regulatory Authority under the Ministry of Health. But to Councillor Wilson's, there's absolutely no reason why council or community boards couldn't advocate directly to that authority and get ahead of the game before approvals are given. The other aspect would be a district plan change, and we know how long they take in terms of getting those through. But that might be the long-term strategic approach to managing some of this. But hope that helps.
Sure does.
And I promise my final question. So if the school or the marae within that area, if they make a complaint, presumably that would carry weight.
Yes. Yeah, I would imagine so.
Okay.
Anybody in the public could submit to the Ministry of Health, to that regulatory team, and they would need to investigate it. We can't determine what would happen with that investigation, but they would get a response.
Thank you. So I'm looking for a mover for recommendations
Happy to move, Madam Chair.
A through C, moved by Councillor Halliday, seconded by Councillor Handford. Right of introduction.
Certainly, Madam Chair. I just wanted to flag, you noted a recommendation that I've asked to put forward from the Kapiti Health Advisory Group. So quite able to take A, B and C in one unit and then perhaps address that as a
Yes,
option.
that's the plan, to do that afterwards.
Lovely. Well, from my end, this has been an interesting journey. I was pulled up by the regional lady, Catherine, at the Regional Health about two local government conferences ago with regards to where we sat in the local hierarchy or the regional hierarchy of, yes, it was a bit brutal, you know, held up the chart in front of me and a whole heap of other people going, that's you guys, which was a little bit embarrassing, and it certainly led to some action. So first of all, thank you to council officers in regards to reacting to that in the way that we have, and I think we've actually caught up with everyone else, if not actually exceeded them through this bit of legislation. So I can hold my head proud when I go to the next local government conference, so to speak. Quite looking forward to that. Excuse me, just bear with me. I also wanted to just highlight what Councillor Wilson was talking to. This is an educational document as well. It's not a bylaw as such. And I'll just call to the support, and thank you, councillors, for supporting my call for us to explore creating a regional body to help the Regional Health Authority get these messages out in a more constructive way, which we'll be working on next year. I do want to note my disappointment in the current government stance in this space, which I think we'll be highlighting in the next recommendation. It's not calling for an about face, it's just talking to, taking a sensible approach as we move forward. But again, I want to highlight vaping, especially with our youth and in schools. It is a huge issue. And I also want to acknowledge the government that it, with regards to what it's been doing with regards to the smoking, should we say, U-turn, the vaping legislation that's currently working through government is still on track, and they do support that. So I wanted to highlight that because it's important that we do get some legislation in this place as fast as possible. Because in my opinion, a generation is being enslaved into a nicotine addiction. And we need to be clear about this. It's not a choice, it's an addiction. And these vapes are being geared towards hooking our youth into this addiction, as we were shown at our Social Sustainability Committee very succinctly by a young lady who gave us a vape, and I couldn't believe how attractive they were and how, well, not that I tasted them, I just smelt, but just how attractive they were. No, I didn't inhale. To be then told that one of these $8.50 vapes that smelt like grapes was equivalent to 15 to 30 cigarettes. That's sobering. That is very, very sobering. Very, very scary. I had no idea. And of course, it's got this little number on it. It's got the nicotine level. And of course, as the young lady that did the presentation said, it's cool to have the highest number you can. And so that's wicked scary. And I'm looking forward to us being very, very proactive in this space. So I look forward to support for this, and I'm hopeful we'll get support for the recommendation as well. But again, thank you to council officers for bringing this through. It's fantastic. Thank you.
Councillor Hanford.
Yeah, just to took all of Councillor Halliday's comments, and also to extend a massive thank you to Mandy Savage from the Cancer Society for all of her advocacy and the workshopping that we were able to do alongside her to learn from her experiences working with other councils, and also her understanding of the reach of the harm of smoking and also vaping into our community, and as Martin said, specifically within our younger population, and the proliferation of vaping and the addiction that is leading to. So I think our role in advocacy has never been more important, especially with the new government, and I just encourage us to be really strong and forthright in our approach that we take, and also what we say and how we say it. So yeah, and also thanks Councillor Halliday for his leadership and hearing about the need for us to do better in the space at the local government conference, and then coming back and doing something about it. So acknowledging that.
I'll put that. Oh, right of reply? No.
Thanks, Sophie. Waived.
Yeah, I'll put those motions now. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? That's carried. Thanks to the staff for the work that's gone into those two
Madam
policies.
Chair, if I could just note the...
And all the work that's gone in by the regulatory team this year. It's just been, there's been so much going on, and I'll say thank you to Jason when he's here as well. Bylaws, policies, strategies, plan changes, just, and we're ahead of a lot of other councils in a lot of spaces, so well done, thank you. Before we move on, I'd like to also point out that we're using our hearing loops for the first time today. Is it working okay for you? Fantastic. So really happy about that. Councillor Spires and Halliday and I were at the Accessibility Advisory Group meeting this week, and there was a big conversation around making our community board meetings more accessible as well. Also met with Conrad Peterson the other day to talk about some of this stuff and let him know what we're doing and what else we can do in that space. So fantastic to see them in use this morning. Yeah, absolutely wonderful. Well done to Democracy Services for setting that up.
Just flagging the other recommendation, Madam Chair.
Oh yes, so now we move on to the other recommendation around this paper, which is an advocacy recommendation that's come through the Kapiti Health Advisory Group. Do we have that? Can we have that up on the screen, please? And then I'll ask Councillor Halliday to move it and introduce it.
Happy to move, Madam Chair, and answer any questions around this. Look, we are very fortunate. We've talked to this before. We've got our...
I think we want to second it first, and also I think we'll read it out as well because it's not in the agenda. So Councillor Hanford is seconding. So we have up on the screen the Kapiti Health Advisory Group KHAG recommendation. The council agrees to the Kapiti Health Advisory Group recommendation that the council conveys to government its disagreement with the intent to repeal the Smoke-Free Environments and Regulated Products Smoke Tobacco Amendment Act 2022. B, the council agrees with KHAG that while there may be some practical challenges in implementing the new smoke-free legislation, the potential health benefits outweigh these concerns. C, The Council agrees with the Kapiti Health Advisory Group that in the event that the Government continues with its intention to repeal the Act, a new replacement parliamentary bill should be introduced designed to meet or improve upon the intent of the current legislation, and that it is subject to the standard rigorous parliamentary process, including select committee hearings and public submissions. D, Council asks that the Mayor to write a letter to the Minister of Health outlining the above, and I'm very happy to do so. So, right of introduction, Councillor Halliday.
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. Sorry, I just my train of thought interrupted. Look, we're very fortunate with the Kapiti Health Advisory Group. As I said, there's a lot of very intelligently smart people, but also some very well-connected people. So when I sent through this, the reason I fast-tracked this is simply because, as I noted in an email I sent around to councillors last night, is that if it was come through the normal channel with regards to Social Sustainability Committee, we wouldn't be seeing it until about March. Just because we're over the Christmas period. And I do think in regards to things like that, which is more of an advocacy situation rather than a policy situation, that we should have the ability to be able to fast track some of this messaging if we wish. That's why I brought it to the table. At the end of the day, I don't feel I'm circumnavigating the Social Sustainability Committee, because fundamentally everyone that's on it is sitting at this table as well. But certainly won't be making a habit of that as well. Ian Powell, who is on that group, he does a blog. He had a very interesting blog in relation to this, which I found very insightful, but also the links included in that blog, also very, very insightful. I wanted to note that some of the things that he noted, and that's not about choice, it's about addiction. And this is not to be confused, the whole situation is not to be confused with prohibition as such. There has been exceptionally strong reactions from health professionals, both nationally and internationally, with regards to the government's direction or change of direction or proposed change of direction, and a lot of community groups. So this recommendation talks about the intent of the provisions of the legislation and ensuring that if the legislation is revoked or is turned around, that actually we keep whatever replaces it, because there has to be some legislation that replaces us, still follows the intent of the legislation. There might be points of the legislation that the current government's not happy with. I do take offence with regards to the implication that one of the reasons that this is going forward is in relation to revenue gathering. And if that's the reasoning behind this, how you can weigh that up against the cost that this will be to the ongoing cost to the health system is, I find, very, very interesting. I appreciate there is concerns around choice, and that could maybe be addressed, and with regards to the outlawing of tobacco for a certain age group, that can be addressed with regards to the process when whatever new legislation is put in place if this one is repealed. But I just wanted to make sure that we put our, and again, it comes down to the council table whether we support this or not, but I certainly was keen to support this and bring it to the table with urgency, as I think this is a critically important issue, especially in relation to vaping as well. Happy to answer. No, it's not my role. Happy to make any other clarities that would be helpful.
Any other contribution to debate?
Only just that it would presumably require the assent of the Mayor, given that you're the one getting to write the letter. But yeah, 100%.
I did add at the end that I was happy to do so.
Oh.
Yeah. It'll be the next in a long list of letters that I've written to the Minister of Health over the past year. Councillor Warwick.
My only concern with this is that we actually banning tobacco is just going to make it criminal. And I work in the health industry. I know it affects people. We were tracking quite well towards reducing tobacco addiction anyway, but I don't think it's just about revenue. It's about actually the criminal activity that will be wrapped around cigarettes in the future, and that's a concern to me. You ban it, you make it illegal, make it a black market.
I guess it depends what you think the intent of the legislation was. Yeah, which is to reduce smoking in the community, I guess. That's why I wouldn't have a problem with it. Councillor Kirby?
We're in debate, is that right?
Yes, but you can ask questions at any time.
I don't probably have enough information around why the government is intending to repeal and what they're intending to replace with, to express it as disagreement. I think I disagree with the way what they have communicated are their plans have been used to become a weapon against them in terms of removing Smokefree. I don't think our government wants to remove the idea of Smokefree and that transition of removing tobacco addiction and the effect it has on the health of our communities. So I guess for me, that's where I stand. There's very strong wording there about disagreement with this when I don't feel like I've got enough information about what the next steps are in terms of replacing it, because I don't think they're going to remove it. Well, they've already signalled they're not going to remove it and then not put something else back in place. So legislation that is passed that has practical problems with implementation is bad legislation, and it needs to be changed and repealed if that is the case. Otherwise, we're creating bureaucracy for the sake of bureaucracy that's of no practical use when it comes to people on the ground. So I guess while I understand the intent behind these recommendations, there are some things about it that I'm still probably we haven't seen the full outworking of it. Similar to our previous debates around the things related to Māori wards, and government has communicated very quickly around some of their intent and where they're wanting to go, but the details are foggy, and people are reacting to foggy detail, not waiting for more information. So those are just my thoughts.
Councillor Wilson?
Yeah, just to just to clarify, I'm not going to second guess what the government would replace this legislation with. It's simple enough to say that they want to replace the legislation. So when groups like the Kapiti Health Advisory Group, they are conveying their disagreement with getting rid of that legislation, it's because they completely agree with the legislation, as do I, as a matter of fact, and as do most people. The vast majority of people do. So it's not that, you know, if it gets replaced with whatever it gets replaced with, then people may want to alter their view. But right now, I think what we are doing is, what this is asking us to do, is sending a signal that do we support the current legislation? And I do, and most people do, and KHEG certainly do. So it's really just showing support for that, for our community, for the well-being and health of our community. That's the message it sends, that we care about the health and well-being of our community and our young people. So yeah, I get the technical points, but I wouldn't be resigning from that messaging. I think that's good. It's a good message, and it's a strong message for us to send.
Right of reply?
Yes, through you, Madam Chair. I think Councillor Wilson actually put it very well with regards to things. I would add, though, that I bring your attention to point C, and I'll use an example. We had the health legislation basically changed, and it was changed without alternative legislation. So what we're asking for here as well is, if you're going to change your legislation, please have something to replace it with. Don't put us in the mess you just put us in with the health system, because that has caused nothing but turmoil. And we get sometimes these ideological approaches to things, and we've seen it on both sides of the houses. And then there's the unintended consequence. We need to have legislation in place around this, regardless of what it looks like. And if they are going to repeal this and replace it with something else, we'll have our ability to, through the consultation processes around that, to push back against the criminality aspect, as has been pointed out by Shelley here, that aspect of it as such, and fair enough too. That's democracy at work. But we have had an instance where all this legislation comes in a great big pile, and these things get overlooked. So what we're doing is expressing a view here with regards to ensuring something else is in place before you do make the changes that you're going to make. So there will be changes here, but just we ask for a considered approach around that.
Great.
Oh, and the other thing I would note as well is that we will potentially be looking for some endorsements as well, maybe from Grey Power, based on some of the concerns they have in that smoking space. They may wish to or not to endorse this, but that's something we were looking at approaching as well. So I do hope you will support this recommendation. It's come through from one of our committees that specialises in this space.
So I'll put that to the vote now. All in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? So, anybody calling a division? Yep. So all in favour, please raise your hand.
So we're doing all in favour?
Yep.
Thank you. Your Worship, Councillor Hanford. Councillor Wilson. Councillor Spires. Councillor Coe. And Cooper online, thank you. Councillor Cooper online. Councillor Coe. Side Councillor Pravanov. And Councillor Halliday. Are those against? Those abstaining? Thank you. Kirby, Warwick, Coford.
And that is carried. Thank you. So we now move on to 10.4. The Wellington Region Waste Management and Minimisation Plan 23 to 29. Final adoption. Big day. Welcome. It's Robbie, is it? Yeah. Welcome, Robbie, and David. I'll pass over to you.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to introduce the report on the Wellington Region Waste Management and Minimisation Plan for final adoption. So I'll take the report as read and I can answer any questions. Thanks.
Thank you. Any questions on this report? Before I ask for a mover, I'd just like to acknowledge the work that's gone into this. Councillor Pravanov for her contribution, subsequently Councillor Halliday, and before that, former Councillor Jackie Elliott was very committed to this as well, so I'd like to acknowledge her. So I'll look for a mover.
Happy to move.
Moved by Councillor Halliday, seconded by Councillor Kirby. Right of introduction.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Gosh, you know, there's a few things coming to a head today, which is absolutely fantastic, isn't it, Robbie? So first of all, I'd like to acknowledge Jocelyn, as in the first part of the triennium was the council representative on the Waste Minimisation panel, the Regional Waste Minimisation panel, and then I've moved to, and I'm the second on that, so we've been tag teaming this over the past while. Look, this is a process. We are legislated to do it, and it's an update from the previous one. Interestingly enough, what came through from the consultative process, if you like, was people wanted to be a lot more aspirational with that. But the thing in this space is you've got to balance aspirational with reality, and you know, there's no point in creating new targets when you actually haven't met the previous ones. As such. So, and that was one of the messages that came through clearly from our officers with regards to that. I guess this is great. My concern about this document is it's going to get lost in the climate conversation. And to me, this document actually represents a whole heap of low-hanging fruit that we will pretty much will be able to get some easy wins of with our community. I know I've commented on this even through my election campaign, that people need to be taking responsibility for their own individual footprints. And if people start doing that, they start building habits and habits build into just a different way of doing things. What this plan does is it allows for those pathways, and I'll make reference to the Otahanga Zero Waste Hub, which Rob and his team are gunning ahead on with regards to getting set up. That is an awesome piece of infrastructure, and I'm certainly very excited to see how that's going to enable people that have initiatives in the sustainability space to be able to grow and blossom them, because I've seen some excellent initiatives come through over the past 6 years through the startup weekend process, only to be extinguished because there's been really nowhere for them to park and develop. So very much looking forward to that. I might even flag there's a certain building in Waikanae that needs to be demolished, that could potentially be dropped in there and dismantled, but we'll talk about that later. I will also talk to the Living Building Challenge, which was brought up at Te Whakaminanga o Kapiti this week, and the bold decision that was made by the Rananga to adopt that approach for the recent classroom build. You know, they went from normally 250 skips of rubbish down to 1 through recycling processes, and Robbie, I have got that guy's details and we'll be sending them through today. But something that Denise commented on is, although it was a higher upfront cost, they are actually receiving some fantastic financial benefits in relation to that piece of work. It's exceeding their expectations. So I'd be encouraging council to be looking at that, perhaps even in the development of maybe, I don't know, some older person's housing with regards to what we do in the future. That's about me with this. This is a great piece of work. I'm looking forward to helping get it embedded into our processes, if you like, and Robbie and co. One thank you from me personally, Robbie. I've appreciated the support at the waste minimisation hearings. You know, we've been sort of tapping backwards and forwards, and I've been able to I think hopefully bring through what our officers wanted to see and not see happen around that particular table. As such, because it was a little bit touch and go there for a bit. This is great. Again, I just reiterate, don't want to see this get lost in the general sort of side of thing. And Sophie, if I could ask the Climate Hub if they can sort of maybe even have a subgroup that's working on this, would be much appreciated. But I do look forward to your support with this document.
Very good. I'd like to comment that this is another way that the region's working together on some of these big issues. And I just think that's really positive for the whole region, that we come together on the things that affect us all. For instance, the Wellington Regional Leadership Group looking at growth, the Transport Committee, the Wellington Regional Emergency Management work, just a few examples of the great work that happens at regional level. And also the work that goes in by our staff, making sure that the work that we do locally feeds in and ties into that and makes sense alongside that regional work. So thanks for the effort that goes into that. Who's next? Councillor Hanford.
Yeah, I'll keep it brief because I agree with everything that Councillor Halliday has already said, and super excited about the C&D resource recovery opportunities at Otahanga, and also to be connected and now with the Sustainability Trust and localised, and for them to have a presence here as well. I think that's really exciting and positions us super well to keep capitalising on the many opportunities there are in this space to keep doing better. And as Councillor Halliday said, when it's also a cornerstone to our emissions reduction aspirations, and the need to reduce emissions when 10% of our profile is connected to our waste, the waste that our district creates. So that is a really important part of the climate picture. So acknowledge what Councillor Halliday has said, and also that the think tank, the Climate Change and Resilience Community Think Tank, will continue to be an avenue through which we can drive these conversations. And I hear the call for a sort of sub-conversation, and maybe that they could connect in with you, Councillor Halliday, and some of those regional conversations you're having, so that they're informed and so that they can also help to inform that perspective that you're taking to that kaupapa, to that group as well. So I acknowledge that there's a lot that we are doing, and that's thanks to the awesome crew that we now have in the waste space. I feel like we've got a really supercharged group of people working on this, not only focused on the management of waste, but the minimisation of it, and I think that's a really crucial distinction as well. But there's also a lot more that we could do, like looking into food scrap collection and the potential for that to be sort of mandated, but then how we roll that out in a way that, as was mentioned this morning, doesn't see a whole lot of trucks moving around our district, because that's something that a lot of people have a bit of a bugbear about, and understandably. So the way in which we can create a more sustainable system for waste collection is something I'm really keen to see us continue having conversations about as well. So just acknowledging all the work that's been done and the great people we have doing that work.
Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, just very quickly agree with that. Chairing the waste levy grants, we had a committee meeting a week or so ago. There are some superb initiatives that are happening right here in Kapiti and also in support of other initiatives that are happening throughout the region. Just spent some time as a member of the Future Development Strategy working with the rest of the region, and to follow on from what Janet was saying, the region has, and there's a bit of light reading if anybody wants to have it read. There's really interesting stuff actually, I have to say. But the region is working really well together. This is just another example of it. I'd mentioned earlier when the A word was thrown around a few years ago and people freaked out at amalgamation, a lot of the stuff that's happening, and this is part of it, is what was intended to happen. Right? But we don't have the political circus that sat on top of it last time. But the actual work that people wanted to achieve regionally is happening, and this is a really good example of it. So, yeah, more power to it. Well done. Cool.
Councillor Pravanov.
Yes, thank you through the chair. I'd just like to follow on the comments that Martin made, and first of all, I'd like to really thank him for stepping in to this position because of my commitments to the Kapiti Whaitua process. And I think Martin has already stepped made his mark in this plan, and I thank you for that. And I think alongside with Robbie, who's actually been a great support for this process. So even though this is a Wellington Regional Waste Management Plan, it's actually our plan as well. And so we've got to remember that. And often, you know, when various elected members or councillors go to these external committees, sometimes these pieces of work can be lost. And I hear what you're saying, but in terms of being lost, I have got great faith that that's not going to happen, because through our climate change and resilience think tank, it also includes waste management, and we have one very, very good waste minimisation expert on that, and I'm really got great expectations for her bringing through a lot of new initiatives that have been mentioned around this table. So thank you again to Martin and to Robbie and the team. Thank you.
Okay. Right of reply?
Heck yeah.
Brief right of reply? So we've got another
Gee shucks,
1,
thanks
2,
guys.
3, 4, 5, 6
I'll keep it very
items
brief.
to go.
I guess there's two things I just wanted to add to that, is that acknowledging both the Mayor and and Jocelyn's note as well. This is a regional approach with regards to things, but within this regional approach, we actually do have our own Kapiti strategy. It's ours. And that sort of stuff. It's different from the other ones. That's ours, and it's geared and focused towards us. So I just wanted to point that out. I also wanted to flag, perhaps with yourself, Robbie, that it would be good to make sure that, and I'm pretty sure that will happen, but that those grants that were just given out, and those people that are in that waste space, that we are connecting them to the Zero Waste Hub as part of that process as well, because I'm sure the support that's needed to bring those businesses through will be much appreciated. And I just wanted to also, again, part of your team is Emma and David. Just wanted to recognise your work as part of this, because it's a team effort. Thank you very much.
Great, I'll put that to the vote. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? That's carried. Thank you very much for the work that's gone into this. Really appreciated. Now, Older Persons Housing Review, page 98. Welcoming Stephen Darren to the table.
Yeah.
Kia ora. I just before I hand over to Stephen, I just want to acknowledge that there has been, I think, a lot of good discussion around older persons housing over probably the last 4 to 6 months, which has got us to a position where we are asking for you to make a decision today, not on the shape of older persons housing as a final decision, but as a choice to consult with our community. I do just want to make a note to say that we will be engaging with the age-friendly reference group and the Older Persons Council in the new year on our next steps, and also just to confirm that we have not made any declaration to any tenants that they are being evicted. And I'm making that statement because we have had a message from some tenants that they were informed that they were going to be evicted. So I just want to note that is not an intention now or in the future, and obviously in the paper that you have received, that is not outlined at all. So we have talked to those people and are going to follow up again, but I just wanted to make that assurance. So one, that you're aware; two, if anyone's online listening, that you've heard it here first. And three, that we aren't taking any steps to do anything without consulting with the community, which is the intent of the paper today, before we head anywhere in the new year. So I'll hand over to Stephen. Thank you.
Good morning. So I'm tabling the report on the older persons housing review. It includes the stage 2 report as appendix, and I'll take it as read. But any questions?
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Wilson.
Just a question around timelines. If we were to shift into other entities, to manage in partnership with and/or whatever. Do we have any sort of timelines around that? Because I know we're making an approach to the ministry about us being considered a chips, well, an entity that we would produce or be part of. So, do we have some timelines around that?
Sorry, I think following the decision around consultation and the feedback we get from the community, which we're hoping you make a decision on today, we have indicated in previous briefings that it is around an 18-month process that we'll be working through. So this isn't we talk to the community and 5 seconds later we're doing something. So there'll be plenty of opportunity for people to be engaged and part of our process. So does that answer the question?
Yes, it does. And also in terms of disquiet, because it's almost like it doesn't seem to matter what comms you do, how many doors you knock on, how many people you go and see. The minute the word change enters the spectrum, people start freaking out, and the older people get, the more likely that is to happen. So just in terms of being able to give people those assurances that, nothing's happening straight away, or do you know what I mean? So that's why timelines become important, I think.
I think I might just note that we have had some people here today who we have chatted to down the back of the room, and I think it's pleasing to note that people who have had the opportunity to read this paper, the report, have indicated that they think the work is really well produced, and that there is agreement that we can't keep doing what we're doing now. It isn't meeting the needs of people in our community, and obviously from affordability perspective, council as well. And it's just what that is, I think, is the interesting question. So I do agree that we do need to sing off the top of the roof that this is about improving outcomes for our older people in the community. And this is only one mechanism for that. So we'll remind everybody that there's a lot of other work underway around social housing and affordable housing, which we're trying to make sure we meet the broader needs of the community.
Yeah, and just my final comment is to Darren and Stephen. Yeah, I think this is a fantastic report actually, and what happens very often is reports get done and they're very, matter of fact. This actually is done with heart, and I think that's really important, and particularly in this area because it's a massively sensitive area for people. So I think the approach has been absolutely sublime. It's brilliant. So more of that, great.
Yeah, so thank you for those questions again, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Kirby's indicated he'd like to move these. I'm looking for a seconder. Councillor Coe is happy to second. So the recommendations are A, B and C, receiving the report, noting the recommended option and agreeing to consult on the preferred option noted in recommendation B. Right of introduction, Councillor Kirby.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As we all know, housing's a big issue in our district, and those of us who have them, it's not an issue, but for those who don't, it is, and it is a sizable issue that affects their well-being. And we have a lot of those people in our district. They're often hidden, and most of us in our everyday lives are unaware of those who are affected by housing. I agree with the comments in question time by Councillor Wilson about the tone of this report and the approach that is being taken by staff, which is very informing the people majorly affected by this, but also opening the door for the fact that we need to do something and to increase what we are doing in this space. So I'm supporting this motion and this review and look forward to the next steps on consultation and where that leads us.
Councillor Coe.
Yep. Look, I just want to reinforce what Lawrence has said. This is a problem of epidemic proportions, the lack of affordable housing for our older people. Housing is, or lack of affordable housing is a prime cause of poverty and retirement, and we have a number of our retirees living in poverty. It's absolutely vital we find a sustainable solution though, because council cannot carry the full burden of that problem. So we need to find a way forward that makes more affordable housing available, but in a sustainable way. And I think, the direction this is heading in is likely to achieve that outcome. So I, fully commend this, that, we continue down this direction, but obviously we need to get feedback from our community on this. That's vital. And I think, the way in which this is communicated is really, really important, so we don't get mixed messages out there, that we don't cause alarm, because what we're intending to do is make things better for our older people, not worse. And I think that's the bottom line. We acknowledge this as a major problem, and we want to do our best to, within our means, in a sustainable way, to resolve that problem. Thank you.
Councillor Halliday.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. Look, I'm very happy with the recommendations. I do feel the chip option sort of came a little bit out of nowhere, but after saying that, if we can get a bespoke arrangement and it's doable, then that's fantastic. Very much in line with Councillor Coe's views on how we make this sustainable. How do we make this so that it's not a burden on the ratepayer as it currently is. This is another example of a piece of work that started in the last triennium, where this table wanted to be involved in housing because we weren't happy with what was happening in our district with regard to central government supply of housing. And this is really a part of that as well. And it's been great over the years that we've had this asset that's been there for a very vulnerable part of our community. And I was quite surprised and concerned to hear about and I guess it really shows the whisper treadmill is working, that already people were hearing that they were going to get evicted We do need to make sure that we're doing some work in there in comms, but I do hope that people that are listening to this make sure they get their facts right. And I am always open to talking to people about this, as I'm sure our council officers are, because the last thing we want to do is put more stress on already a vulnerable sector of our community with regards to the narratives around this. It will be delicate, but I certainly will be making assurance, and everything I've heard in the last 4 years has always been about no matter what happens, we look after the interests of the people that are in those spaces. And if we can do that in a more affordable manner for council and for our ratepayers, then that's great. I do have a little bit, I will flag, I have a little bit of concern around, and I'd like to get more of an understanding of the figures. The figures that are touted means we're spending $160,000 over 10 years per unit, and $14,500 per year per unit on OPEX. That's after the income coming in. So I'd just like a little bit of clarity around that, but it doesn't get away from the fact that this is still ratepayer funded to a point, and it would be good to be able to get some better outcomes for that. Also, I wanted to acknowledge Stephen Darren in this space as well, with working especially with myself and Rob in that housing space via our committees. It's been great, and look, just recently, Stephen, we were talking to someone who's actually looking at investing. Well, not looking at investing; they have invested in the land for housing that they want to see specifically used for our older persons, because they see the gap in that market as well, and they're looking at ways. And we're helping. The thing is, what I found great about that is we're helping facilitate that process. We're helping to hold their hand through that process, and to me, that's been a big part of the change in direction with regards to things, is helping to enable not just us to supply some housing, but others to potentially supply housing too in a constructive way. So bring it on, I say. And again, thank you very much, gentlemen, for your work in this space.
Yeah, so I'll talk all the comments about improving outcomes for older people. Thanks to staff for the report. I'm going to move to the vote now so that our second is in the room when we take that vote. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? That's carried. Well done. Thank you. Sorry. Deprived you of your right of reply. So now we're moving on to a plan change 1A, accessible car parking, and 1C, cycle parking. Here comes.
Jason in a suit.
It happens. I heard great reports about your role as Santa at our.
Yeah, it's actually really low.
What's it called? Not accessible. What was it called? Not accessible Christmas. What was the name?
Sensory.
No, sensory. I'd like to welcome Jason Holland, fresh from his stint as Santa at our low sensory Christmas celebration. Heard great reports. So with that, in current role, introducing our plan change 1A and 1C. Thanks, Jason.
Tēnā koutou katoa. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor, and I'd like to also introduce you all to Christine Foster, who was a consultant planner who's supported us right from the start of these plan changes, and also Upas in my team, who's been very helpful in the latter stages of getting us to this point. So what you have before you are two plan changes that are now at a stage where they're ready for you to make decisions on the provisions and matters raised in submissions. You have a plan change known as Plan Change 1A, which concerns accessible car parking, and a separate plan change known as Plan Change 1C, which is about cycle parking. Both of these plan changes have common origins. They both address an unintended consequence of a national direction through the National Policy Statement for Urban Development. Now, that's a national policy statement that's probably most famous for driving intensification around centres and rapid transit stops, but there are other requirements in that document as well. And one of the earliest manifestations of that for district planning throughout the country was a requirement to withdraw any requirements in district plans that compelled a minimum number of general car parks to be provided for new developments. Now, the reason why that had an unintended consequence in this district is that our district plan calculated both accessible car parking requirements, that's disabled car parking as you might have heard of it in the past, but also cycle parking spaces. Both of those were in the district plan calculated as a proportion of the general minimum car parking requirements. And so what happened when we were required, and we did meet those requirements, to pull out the general minimum car parking requirements is that broke the calculation cycle, and there were no longer a feasible way of calculating either of those things. So what council did, and this was back in February 2020, by the way, when we were required to pull those out, is responded very quickly by, for the accessible car parking side of things, applying to the Environment Court for immediate legal effect, and then making a decision to notify a plan change to introduce a new way of calculating accessible car parking, which was still based off the same kind of approach, but it just used a different method that wasn't hanging off the general minimum car parking requirements. So the Environment Court agreed and made a decision that this plan change, the accessible car parking plan change, would have immediate legal effect. And so it was notified on the same day as those general minimum car parking requirements were withdrawn. So there was no regulatory gap. They had immediate legal effect, and they have had ever since 17th of February 2020. Cycle parking provisions, Plan Change 1C, were also notified on that day. Didn't have immediate legal effect. That wasn't sought from the Environment Court. Basically, we didn't think there was as strong a case, and so it wasn't sought for the cycle parking. But there are, and have been for some time, higher level policy direction in the district plan that says that there should be cycle parking provided for, and also some high level direction about that it should have appropriate layout and things like that. But there wasn't until Plan Change 1C a rule that really gave that any specific meaning. So there was a bit of uncertainty for developers, noting that both of these requirements are all about new developments, not about asking people who weren't changing anything to put these things in. They're all about new developments. There wasn't anything in the district plan before in the rules about how to give effect to that high level direction about cycle parking layouts and design features. So before notification, there was consultation on a draft, and we did get some feedback, and that was very helpful. We then notified as a council. Decision was made to notify, as I said, 17th of February 2022, I should have said there. And we got 2 submissions on the accessible car parking provisions and 1 submission on the cycle parking provisions. We then did further submissions later in 2022, and we didn't receive any further submissions in respect of either of those submissions. Since that time, we have been engaging with both submitters in an effort to see whether or not there could be an agreement reached between council officers and the submitters that we could essentially bring to the table to council that might avoid the need for a hearing. And it just so happened that thanks to Christine's work, thanks to both submitters, the Kapiti Disability Advisory Group and also Sheffield Nahina Developments, discussions were held in good faith, and an agreement was reached on some amendments that would meet the concerns of the submitters and were satisfactory to the council officers. And so really that's what your decision is today is to look at those plan changes as amended, as agreed with those submitters, and make a decision under Clause 10 of Schedule 1 whether or not you're comfortable with those amendments. There is also an element of this which requires a decision about withdrawing a small part of one of those plan changes, and that's to do with Plan Change 1A, the accessible car parking provisions. That decision is necessary because Plan Change 2 came along and actually deleted that part of the district plan, which Plan Change 1A had a wee amendment in there to change. And so that can no longer be a change that can be progressed because that appendix no longer exists. And by the way, we now actually have more modern design guides instead of that older design guide, so that's good news. But we have therefore in this report put to you that there really isn't a choice. That part of Plan Change 1A needs to be withdrawn, and that's part of the suite of decisions that have been sought from you today. I think I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you. Christine, do you have anything to add?
No, just mindful of time.
Nothing to add. Thank you, I appreciate that. Any questions? Councillor Wilson?
Oh, no, unless anybody else is particularly keen, I'm happy to move this.
Moved by Councillor Wilson, seconded by Councillor Hanford. Okay, well, so it's been moved and seconded. We'll take questions as well. Great. Yep. So you can ask a question and then you can contribute to debate separately. if you
Sure,
like.
no troubles at all. Look, the question's actually unintended consequence of an unintended consequence, actually. And it's just, wanted to ask, with regards to the requirement for cycle parking, it's in regards to developers and new developments. But I was just wondering if, and I'll just use an example, let's just say I'm opening up a restaurant or opening up a new business in a space. Does that trigger the requirement for me to supply car parks as such?
So
bicycle parks?
Yeah, so the new method is, instead of it being based off general car parking provisions, there are now tables in each of the rules. So if we take cycle parking for example, there is a table called TR Table 6B inside the new proposed rule. You need to find in that table the activity that you're proposing to do, and things like the extent to which that activity would increase gross floor area. There is metrics in that table that will tell you how many extra parks, if any, you need to provide. So it's explicitly laid out in a table instead of it being some kind of a proportion of some other measure. So for all situations, the table has the answer to it, and it's just a case of working through and doing the maths.
Doesn't really answer the question, but no, that's all right. I'll wait to see if there's, because pretty much the rule's the rule. Just how we work around that, because sometimes it can be, if there's, say, bicycle stands handy or something on that sort of line, you can use that as a mitigating circumstance, and you can say that, well, they're there as such. But that tends to be one of those things that can catch smaller businesses out, not just the larger developers there as well. Cool.
Yeah.
Lovely. And I guess with regards to debate, look, this is...
Hang on a minute. We'll just finish off questions and
Oh,
then
sorry,
I'll invite
there's
a
other
round of
questions.
introduction.
Okay, no problems.
Any other questions on this paper? Yeah. Councillor Cofer?
Oh, thanks. Thanks, Madam Chair. Jason, Christine, congratulations. This is a great initiative to introduce these, improved values for our bikes and cars and parking. And the design guides look pretty sound. The question is, how many developments out there at the moment under construction, which are under the MPS urban regime, that don't, obviously won't have these new requirements, affected on them. How many are there out there? And is that big thing on the corner of Kapiti and Mohier Street, is that one of them?
So I can't give you an answer about number of developments or specifically about that development. I'm sorry, I can't answer that either. What I can say though is that the accessible car parking provisions have actually had legal effect all the way through. And so they would have been a consideration in the consenting process for that development. And for any development, accessible car parking provisions have had legal effect. The cycle parking provisions, on the other hand, haven't had legal effect in terms of that new rule. It's only been a higher level policy direction that's been existing there. And so the extent to which that's manifested itself in new developments, I don't know the exact answer, but my suspicion is probably to a lesser extent because it hasn't had that teeth in the rules.
Okay. Can existing developments be revisited then with 1C cycle requirements?
No. This is purely about new developments only. It's not about existing developments.
Great. So, Councillor Wilson, this has now been moved and seconded. Councillor Wilson, Councillor Handford, right of introduction.
Yeah, just really comfortable with this and the fact that Sheffield, Nahina and disabilities reps that you have negotiated your way through this. It's actually, some councils might have dedicated many, many years to arguing this through hearings and appeals. So the fact that there's not even a hearing required, I think, is just huge. It's fantastic. Covers all the bases, comprehensive.
Yeah, I talk all that. Brilliant process and excellent background negotiation is often key to a really good outcome. So, yeah, congratulations on that. And thank you also for we discussed this in some detail so that we had the background and were able to iron out some of the problems that turned out not to be problems that we thought they were. So thank you for that as well. Councillor Handford, sorry, you've hidden your microphone behind your computer.
Yeah, not too much to add to this as well, but appreciated the opportunity to have a briefing on this and also for the answers to our questions to be sent back via email. That was really appreciated. A little bit disappointing that the requirement in Standard 2J for cycle parking to be in a covered area only applies to staff. I would be awesome if all developments were required to have covered cycle parking. I think that would be amazing. And the other thing I was reflecting on is how now we have so many people riding e-bikes around the coast. If any of the cycle parking could have a requirement to have connection to electricity for e-bikes to be able to be charged, acknowledging that that's definitely outside of the scope of this now, but it's just something that on reflection, was thinking about how that might intersect with the provision of more cycle parking and more people cycling in the district, which is something we want to encourage. But yeah, I think as Councillor Wilson said, happy that we've gotten to this point with it, and thank you for the conversations that have been had in the background and also the enormous amount of work that we don't see and that's very technical that goes into informing what we have in front of us. So just appreciate all of that, mahi.
Councillor Halliday.
Through you, Madam Chair, and look, just supporting both Councillor Wilson's and Councillor Handford's views. I really appreciate the officers saw the unintended consequence here and dealt with it. And I guess this is this is all the technical stuff that's way above our heads and that sort of stuff. And so really appreciate the officers doing this. And I just also wanted to comment on yourself, Jason, how you I've commented on this before. You just have this ability to make very, very complex issues very understandable, and with very few words. And that sort of stuff in a very measured way. So that's also very much appreciated because, you make it sound very simple, yet you're well aware of as you said, this was triggered in 2020. We're only dealing with this, landing it now. So all that work that goes on in between, and you can just sum it up in pretty much all 2 paragraphs. That's understandable. So I really do appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Right, a reply?
Just briefly. Those who are outside of these new rules, it doesn't mean that they can't voluntarily comply with them. So, for instance, cover your cycles. Be cool. Let's have a comms program around. Yeah, yeah, be cool. Yeah, so I mean that's where the comms part comes in, to express the fact that this is a positive initiative. This is a progressive initiative on part of this council, and that those who may have missed the bus of these flash new regulations have an opportunity to join in. Let's play that game. But anyway, it's great work. Fabulous.
So I'll put that to the vote. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against, that's carried. And before you leave the table, Jason, I just want to reiterate my thanks to your team for the huge amount of work that's gone in this year, particularly around Plan Change 2, around this as well. Thank you as well for your help with this. Yeah.
Ho, ho, ho.
There's a very low sensory ho-ho. Perfect. Okay, moving on. Keeping trucking on. 10.7, amendments to council delegations to staff on page 199. Sarah is coming to the table. Thank you so much, Jason. Thank you. We should be able to whip, I know it says 15 minutes in the agenda, but I'd like to see us go through this in 3. We'll take it as read.
Yeah.
And invite questions. Is that what we're going to do?
Happy to take it as read, invite questions. The main of it is positional changes to the delegations, and then there is the revoking the delegation to staff around the private plan change under clause 25 schedule 1. So that's it. So I'm happy to take any questions or put it to the recommendations.
Yeah, that means council decides on private plan changes, which is something the previous council was really keen on and appropriate, I think. Yep. So moved by the Deputy Mayor, seconded by the Mayor. Right of introduction, waived. Any debate? I'll put that to the vote. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? That's carried. Thank you, Sarah. Yoo-hoo! So item 11, confirmation of minutes on page 220. Moved by Councillor Wilson, seconded by Councillor Kirby. Any debate? Any comments? No. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? That's carried. So we've got a resolution now to exclude the public. We've got an extra item to come, which we deferred from matters of an urgent nature. So that means we need an extra reason to exclude the public, which will now be put on the screen. You need to be clear about your reasons to exclude the public. So this is to allow us to discuss an additional item in public excluded. So that's 13.2, it's up on the screen. The withholding of the information is necessary to protect the privacy of natural persons, including that of deceased natural persons. That last part is not necessary in this particular case. So I'll ask that somebody move that we go into public excluded. Moved by Councillor Hanford, seconded by Councillor Halliday. All in favour, please say aye. Aye. That's carried. Thank you for those on live stream for your attendance today.